Today is Monday, March 20th, 2023. All council members are present, as well as the town clerk, town attorney, and town manager. If you'll please rise for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
We come before you and ask for guidance as we respond to the requests before us on this agenda. We praise and thank the many blessings bestowed on us each day. We pray to enlighten each one of us here to do what is best for the people of Fort Myers Beach, who have put their trust in us as we listen to public comment and to each other. We ask that our hearts are open as we deliberate on what is best for the common good of all. Help us to reach the decisions that will best serve the people of Fort Myers Beach now and in the future. Grant us the grace to be kind, truthful, and courageous when faced with difficult choices, and not let us lose sight of the common good. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And those of you in the audience, if you wouldn't mind, just a reminder to silence your phones, please. Thanks. Next, we have approval of the final agenda. Is there a motion to approve the final agenda?
Moved.
I'll second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Public comment, Madam Clerk?
I have nobody signed up.
That's okay. Come on up.
Is it okay? Yeah. Okay. I'm a resident, Jean Guzzi, Fort Myers Beach, and you're having a joint session this afternoon with the LPA. So I have three things to hopefully you consider. Right now in your code, you have a 40% rule. So the maximum that you can build square footage-wise is 40% of your lot. On the golf in particular, you have all that extra space. So some of these large massed houses are because of the 40% rule. So think about a 5,000 square foot maximum. So in other words, it's either 40% or 5,000 square foot, which is a mansion. So then you're not going to have 7,000, 8,000 square foot houses. So just a thought. In your original LPA, the first one where, not LPA, your code, you had 25 feet maximum past your 17 feet, whatever. You know, with the hurricane, how high. Why did we go to 30 feet? I don't quite understand. Why not keep it at 25 feet, which was what was originally intended for the maximum height of houses? So just another thought. And I want to say the mayor was interested in 30% of the ground floor enclosed. So look at 30%, because from the hurricane we know that those breakaway walls, they worked, but they were a mess. If we go to 30% of the build, then we're going to have more open space. I'm just trying to figure out things so that we can still keep the beach. Because right now, I see us becoming Hickory. I see the project portal. I see what's going on. These houses, especially on the Gulf, are massive. So we need to try and figure out ways to keep us how we want to be, I think, unless we want to be just like Hickory. So that's why, as nervous and crazy as I sound, I wanted to make sure I got out here to say, let's think of some things to keep us controlled, you know. So there's that. And then I sent an email message about workforce housing. And I challenged everybody here to say, why not put workforce housing on the new town hall, on the new fire station? I didn't hear anything. So I'm hoping you guys can start at home. And Councilman Veach, you put things together where we have money. And maybe with the state and the federal, we can help pay for the town hall and the fire department. We're going to give workforce housing. Everybody wants it. So let's look for grants and monies, and let's start at home. Because I feel like we've got to get workforce housing. We know all those houses that blew away, they had those little apartments. That's where our workers lived. They're not there anymore. We're not going to have workers. It's going to cost a fortune. So just another thought, and actually wanted to congratulate Bill, who's the lone soldier from code enforcement, because everybody else quit, that the one pool that I talked with you guys last time has been emptied. That's the one that had the car in it, because you can tell how toxic that was, but it's emptied, which is fabulous. And the tents are now moved off. I'm hoping that Captain Jack and the VA have found him a great place to live. So I appreciate the work that the town has done in that area. So I think did I make the buzzer? Thank you. I made the buzzer. Okay. Thank you all. Hopefully.
Thanks, Jean. Anyone else care to speak under public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Local achievements and award recognitions and awards. Vice Mayor Adderholt.
Well, I always try to be the eternal optimist, and there's so many folks that deserve recognition today, but I'm going to go in an opposite direction and be a contrarian. I'm going to tell you who I'm not going to recognize this morning, and that is the litany of property and casualty insurance companies who are literally thwarting our recovery and thwarting the ability of our residents to rebuild on our island. There are so many, and it's not everybody, but there are so many property and casualty companies and adjusters who are denying claims, denying service to our residents, that I would ask the CFO for the state of Florida and the Office of Insurance Regulation, the state of Florida, I'd ask them to do what I used to be the state insurance commissioner for Indiana for 4 years, and what we had, one of the tools, since insurance is still primarily state regulated, we had a tool where we could issue what's called a market conduct exam, and an outside auditor comes in and examines the claims process and does an outside audit, independent, and makes a determination as to whether claims are being paid appropriately or not. And I would ask that the CFO and the state insurance commissioner issue 3 market conduct exams to the most egregious 3 companies, again, based upon the number of complaints that they've received, not necessarily the biggest ones, but the ones where, in proportion to the size of the company and the number of insureds, the 3 most egregious offenders and the entities that are receiving the most in complaints. As I can tell you, a market conduct exam gets the attention of the insurance companies. The independent audit is paid for by the insurance company, and then the results of that audit can be utilized by the state insurance officials to come down hard, assuming there's inappropriate behavior, and correct that inappropriate behavior. I don't expect insurance companies to pay claims that are not legitimate, but that's not what's happening here in Fort Myers Beach. They are not paying legitimate claims, and it's extremely disruptive to our island and to the residents, and it's not right. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor, you're welcome, Vice Mayor. Councilman Veach.
Yeah, I would. I don't know if you've mentioned the sign painters out there. It's pretty fun. Sometimes it's a real test for my eyesight, but it's useful now that so many of our landmarks are gone. I'd also like to just give a shout out to the FGCU women's basketball team playing tonight. They won their first game, so here's to Cinderellas.
Councilor Woodson.
Yeah, I want to give a huge shout out to Beach Talk Radio and the event that took place, the resident events that took place at Sunset Celebration on Times Square on Saturday. I mean, I think it was just a fabulous event. People loved every minute of it. I never saw so many chairs sitting on Times Square, and I mean, it was really great. And my understanding is, because I challenged Ed Ryan, I said maybe just not be Beach Talk Radio, but an event planner. And so he's already told me there's going to be another event on Mother's Day weekend. I believe on that Sunday will be a 5K on the beach. So I think we should be looking for that permit to come through. But it was a great event, and I just want to salute everyone who was there, who participated, all the nonprofits. It was very fun.
Councilor King.
Watching Wink News one day last week, I came across a story about Joe Orlandini, and they're calling him a man with a plan, and he's helping Tammy Drake rebuild a home on the beach, and just wanted to share and thank him for that. And also, during that story were Mike and Don Miller, the owners of the Whale, and they contributed $100,000 towards that effort. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. And I'll just kind of reiterate, I think, what Karen and some of the other ones have said. The event this weekend, the Beach Talk Radio put on for Sunset Celebration, was a lot of fun. The nonprofits that were out there, I think, really enjoyed it. Murph was out there with their pop-up tent. The musicians were there, although there was a little bit of technical difficulty. We got through it. I think people were enjoying the weather. It was nice and cool. The rain held off. So I think the businesses did really well. I think the residents and the visitors that were there really enjoyed it. So looking forward to the next one. Moving on, we got advisory committee. Huh?
You're going to run in the 5K?
You do not want to see me run. We've got hurricanes. We don't need earthquakes. Next, we have advisory committees, items, reports, and appointments. Any advisory committees out here? Seeing none, we'll move on to the presentation of the Corradino Group.
Got approval of minutes.
Did I go over that already? Oh, I did. See, it jumped over it again. Let's go back. We've got approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carried unanimously. Now we'll go to the presentation of the Corradino Group. Eddie? Is Eddie here? Mr. Tom, has anybody heard from Ed? Does Ed know he's supposed to be here? All right, then we'll just move forward and we'll come back. In the meantime, can someone try to reach out to him and see if he plans on being here? Thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. Consent agenda carries unanimously. Next, we have public hearings. First one is 6240 and 6230 Estero Boulevard, Carousel Residential Plan Development, RPD. This is the second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 23-06 entitled, An Ordinance of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, replacing Town of Fort Myers Beach Resolution number 18-11 and amending the schedule of uses for the residential plan development zoning for the property located at 6240 and 6230 Estero Boulevard, Fort Myers Beach, providing for revisions to conditions of approval and other clarifications as necessary, providing for conflicts of law, scrivener's errors, severability, and providing for an effective date. We will open the second reading. Mr. Town Manager, I know you, or Town Attorney, I know you want to say.
Yes, this item is quasi-judicial in nature, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So before we take any testimony, anyone who's going to give said testimony needs to stand and raise their right hand. That includes staff. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Witnesses have been sworn in, and at this time it would be appropriate to disclose any ex parte communications any members of the council may have had.
Okay, Vice Mayor Adderholt? Councilor Veach?
None for me.
Councilor Woodson?
None for me.
Councilor King?
None.
And just a drive-by for myself.
Sorry.
Who would like to start?
I believe that Mr. Smalley is going to make the presentation for staff. If the applicant wishes to go first, that's normally the order. And
Is the applicant here? Would you like to go first?
Mr. Mayor, Town Council, Ken Galander here on behalf of the applicant, Carousel Beach LLC. We're here 2 weeks ago. Staff did their prior presentation. I believe you unanimously approved on first reading. Have it, perhaps any questions you may have, but from that, hopefully that doesn't.
Your roof won't do that, will it?
Right. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any for you. But we appreciate your consideration and looking forward to your approval.
Any questions for Ken? Not at this time.
Okay,
Thanks, Ken.
thanks.
Jason? Ed?
morning, councilors. My name is Jason Smalley. I'm with the Planning and Zoning Department. I think it might be just helpful for anybody watching from home just to briefly explain again what the purpose of the request is. This is for a development entitled Carousel, and the request is for a variance to their, or excuse me, an amendment to their CPD, which limited the height of the building. What the request is today is to allow for uses on the top deck, the top roof. It would allow for non-roof structures to be a maximum of 10 feet above the deck of the roof. There will be parapet walls around the top, so you wouldn't see the full 10 foot of whatever they decide to put up there. But the intent is to create a outdoor living area on the roof, and then allow for, as I said before, non-roof structures. If there are any questions from planning staff about our process, I'm open to answering anything you may have.
I have one quick. What's a parapet roof?
So a parapet would just be an architectural structure, basically a non-structural wall around the roof to give it a little bit more height. That's really intended to screen what's going on the top. Usually you would use a parapet wall if you were attempting to screen an air conditioning unit or something on the top of the building. I mention that only because, again, the deck, the top of the roof, where they would be doing any of these activities, is going to be partially obscured by the parapet wall that's going to be at the top.
Jason, just so there's no confusion, I thought I heard you say that the desire is to create an outdoor living area. I don't think we mean that, right?
I'm sorry, that may be a technical term for it. It's an outdoor area that would give the ability for people to be out there. It's not actually a place where people would live and sleep. Really, from the designs that they've presented to staff, is a outdoor sitting area and some small things in the realm of like pergolas, non-roof structures.
Just want to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jason? Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
We'll bring it back to the council for any discussion. Is there any discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
need to open up the public hearing.
Oh, yes, sorry. Open up the public hearing. Public comment. Is there anyone here that chooses to speak on this public hearing? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Now we'll bring it back to the council for any discussion. Yes, sir.
Before you vote on the item, I don't know if the title of the ordinance was read into the record, so we do need to do that.
Did I not read it? I thought I did. I did at the beginning.
If you did, then that's fine.
Yeah.
I just don't.
No, I read the entire thing.
Okay.
But
Yes, you did. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay.
That's fine.
Jeez, making me think twice. All right. Is there any discussion at the council? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve? Roll call. Okay.
Once the motion is made.
Once the motion is
So moved.
Second.
motion and a second. Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Aye.
Councilor Veach?
Aye.
Councilor Woodson?
Aye.
Councilor King?
Aye.
Mayor Allers? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Administrative Agenda A. Resolution 23-28 and 23-29 entitled "A Resolution of the Town Council of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending and extending the proclamation." Oh, I'm on the wrong one. I'm sorry. God, I'm having a rough morning. I'll just read from this one. Try this again. Administrative Agenda A, RFQ-20-22-AD, Ongoing Miscellaneous Professional Services Amendment. Adopt Resolution 23-23 entitled "A Resolution of the Town Council of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving a First Amendment to the agreements between the town and the firms selected under the town solicitation RFQ 20-22 AD for ongoing miscellaneous professional services to conform to 2 CFR, authorizing the execution of the First Amendment by the town manager and providing an effective date." Yes, sir.
These items are intended to bring a series of continuing services agreements that we already have in place into compliance with the 2 CFR. So to the extent that we use their services, then they would be eligible for reimbursement through FEMA if they're Hurricane Ian related services.
And John, if you wouldn't mind, just for the record, explain what 2 CFR is again for those that may not understand.
Yeah, 2 CFR stands for Chapter 2 of the Code of Federal Regulations, where FEMA and the federal government had set forth specific requirements that must be followed for any services that any local government throughout the state of Florida, for that matter, the nation, engage in as part of a FEMA declared emergency. So that that you follow a specific procedure, there's certain requirements, and so all of those services then are potentially available for reimbursement by FEMA, or in this case as well, the Florida Division of Emergency Management, as a result of, in our case, the impacts of Hurricane Ian.
All right.
And John, do you get any pushback from the vendors on signing this amendment?
No, none whatsoever.
Any other questions for staff? Hearing none, is there a motion for administrative agenda item A
So moved.
to approve or
Second.
deny? I assume you mean to approve.
Yes.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have administrative agenda item B, amend an updated fiscal year 22-23 town-wide fee schedule. Adopt Resolution 23-24 entitled A Resolution of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, adopting and implementing by reference the fiscal year 2022-2023 town-wide fee schedule, unless prohibited by state law or the town charter, providing for codification, conflict of law, scrivener's errors, severability, providing for an effective date. John?
Yeah, this resolution is brought back to you pursuant to the recent amendment that we made to the code, which allows the town council to adopt its fee schedule by resolution. There was some discussion at the council level when that ordinance was adopted to make certain changes to the fee schedule itself, and so that's why the fee schedule is before you for your consideration, modification, and ultimate adoption.
So just for clarification, there's no changes within the current fee schedule. This is just to change it from ordinance to resolution.
No, there are some there were
I
some
must have missed
directions
them.
given to
Oh,
town
that's
staff
right.
to make some
Right.
changes. I believe they're set forth in the actual fee schedule in strikeout and underline form. I'll defer to staff, to the manager, for where those specific changes are.
So this is to adopt the fees that we
Modified.
changed before.
Yes, sir.
But John, back to the mayor's original point, it is changing it from an ordinance to a resolution. Is that correct?
No, it's already been done. That we're just making, as part of that process, you all asked for the fee schedule to be revised, and that's why it's the fee schedule is before you. The ordinance allowing it has already been adopted.
Very good. Thank you.
I had one kind of obscure question. I don't know if anybody can answer this around the staff, but there was a thing under parking. It was like a bag fee, like a charge per bag in the parking. Does anybody know what that's for?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say, assume it's to cover it up for an event, and that there would be a charge for that for loss of parking.
I believe that's correct. I didn't recall until John said that. Yes, there's a.
Gotta hold the button down.
Holding my button down. To waive the fees during those events, so the bag is placed over the meter at that time. And I'm perusing right now to see what the fee changes are in the resolution there, but my recollection was that council had revised the fees for beach services regarding jet skis, parasailing, and then also chairs. There was discussion about short-term rental fees, but there was no determination at that time or action taken, and the same with parking fees, and no action taken to my recollection.
I thought we raised the parking fee. I thought we raised the parking fees.
Fees, I think the violation for the fees was to be compatible with that of the other municipalities instead of having the 2 or 3 different.
Right, tiers.
Right. It wasn't a change to the fee to park. I believe it was like $77, and I think, was it 200 or 250 for the
$250 for handicap.
for handicap? Yeah. But I'm trying to find. I don't see that underlined on here.
On the parking fees are on page 111 of the agenda packet. I think I'm 99.9% sure that we haven't necessarily put in the fee schedule the what the fees are for the violations. We just implement that administratively through changing the ticket itself that gets issued.
So fines are not a fee. They're
No,
handled elsewhere.
They're a fine. They're not a fee, and we will take the council's direction to increase those fines and incorporate them into the program, the app, which then automatically generates the ticket itself that sets forth what the fines are.
And I think that your numbers might be a little off because 111 is not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe it's my. Oh,
Yeah, I think there's like 13 pages.
sorry.
Trying to find it on here so I can give the correct number.
Well, it's the second page of the fee schedules where you'll find the parking fees.
Give me a second and I'll tell you which one it is here.
Parking fees, yep.
That's packet page 124 for anyone following along. Any discussion? On it, anything you want to discuss, Mr.
I just want to ensure that, since I don't have a current copy, that the personal watercraft and the beach things, those were changed and corrected, or?
There's a beach vendor. It looks like it's.
It's still at 685,
Yeah.
but we had talked about prorating it this
I thought it-
year
yeah,
for
like-
when people can actually set up and get out on the beach to do that. So we had talked about prorating that.
I don't. Yeah, I don't think there was a set number from the M&P meeting that was laid out.
I don't mean to, yes, and I think the conversation was, one, that you gave us that direction, and we will implement it administratively for this year, because, God willing, next year we won't have to prorate. So we will do that administratively. That instructions were previously given, even when the fee schedule was initially being discussed, and that's what we're doing at the staff level.
So that doesn't necessarily have to be written within here.
No, it doesn't. Maybe certainly we can, but the idea is that this would be something. The fee schedule, as will be published, is then something that moving forward everyone can look at and see and understand and know what the applicable fee is. But as I said, to repeat myself, it's been very clear direction from the council from day one to prorate the beach chair, parasailing, personal watercraft. That fee schedule will be prorated. And I think one of the issues you may recall that we talked about explaining that we would do it administratively is that they don't sync up. The one fee is due and payable at one point of the year, and the other one is a separate point in the year, and therefore it didn't lend itself to easily reflect it in the fee schedule. We're doing it administratively.
I also had written down from the MMP that we were changing the actual current fees that were on there from, I thought we were doing about a 3% So it had gone from, say, the personal watercraft vendor license had been $685. We were looking at $409. That's what I had written down. Parasailing vendor license, administration license enforcement was also $605. 3% at $119.
Okay, so,
Yep, I remember that conversation as well.
And as
Okay,
well as
so-
with the beach furniture at 3%.
so on, it's found at other, the fee schedule, last page. The personal watercraft vendor license, the parasailing vendor license and the, where's the?
Beach furniture is on the very last page.
And the beach furniture one will reduce by 3% across the board and that will be reflected in the final document that gets published if that's the will of the majority of the council.
Is it, I'm sorry, is it reduced 3% or we're just giving it an increase of 3%?
It was an increase of 3% from the fees prior to this.
And I'll just go ahead and apologize. I would have preferred this to be in strike and add form, so we could see these changes, and I didn't recognize what changes were made either with the 685 there. So if you'd like, we can take this back and revise it and enact it next meeting.
Yeah, I would be in favor of that. I'd like for the public's consumption to be able to see exactly what those numbers are, to be able to
Okay.
make sure that our recollection and their recollection add up.
And then one last thing on the short-term rental application. We had talked about, the 300 per room, but then possibly dismissing the extra 100 per bedroom. And there was also conversation that people were worried if they had short-term rentals, but they didn't renew it this year because they had no rental to have someone in, that they wouldn't lose their right to have their short-term rental for next year once they're back in the swing of things. So I just want to make sure that we have all of that covered, or do we agree on the $100 per bedroom, or just where are we at with that?
I don't recall that conversation was drawn to a conclusion and a motion was made for those revisions, but there was that conversation.
I think for best, bring it back so that we can have this with the redlined item like you were talking about. Then we could have that discussion at the time when we open that up and make any changes. Since it has already been changed, that we could do it through a resolution at the same time. Any objection to that, John?
So we'll,
So is this like in a one meeting process, John, where we would go and agree to changes and then adopt at the same meeting?
yes, sir.
Okay.
That was
The intent.
the intent. And so what we'll do is we'll continue administrative agenda item 11B to the next meeting.
Any objection to that? All right. Thanks, John.
Agree.
Do we need a motion to do that?
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to continue administrative agenda item B to the next meeting.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously.
And we will have the original amounts to compare.
Yes, it'll be strikeout and underline.
Right. Next administrative agenda item C, ITB-23-06-PW Town Road Signs. Adopt Resolution 23-25, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, accepting V&H Construction, Inc. as the top-ranked responsible and responsive bidder to ITB-23-06-PW road signs, approving an agreement between the town and VH Construction, Inc. for the installation of new town road signs, authorizing the town manager to negotiate a final and best offer and execute the agreement and expand budgeted funds on behalf of the town and providing an effective date. I have a quick question. In going through this, I saw how the first, the winning bidder, if you will, was rejected for various reasons. Is there a reason why there was such a discrepancy between their cost of $141,000 and what we're looking at here, this 300 and whatever it is, some thousand?
391, 808.
That seems like a a very large window.
I don't have an answer for you on that. I saw the same thing and was curious, but I didn't pursue it. I can do that and get back with you.
Well, it appeared the other three of the four were fairly close in numbers, but it just seemed maybe that's why there were several things that throughout that bid. Did you, John? Do you have any input on that?
No, looking at the numbers, I think everyone reaches the same conclusion, the large disparity, but then the remaining bidders are closely clustered. So, maybe the lowest bidder, the putative lowest bidder didn't understand what the scope was, because normally you don't see that large of a spread between the first and second lowest bidders. So.
And I think I was reading that it wasn't like he was disqualified because he didn't dot an I or cross a T. There was some significant issues with it.
Yeah, they did in fact leave out some significant number of the required paperwork wasn't executed or executed improperly, so staff made the determination, which from a legal perspective I concurred with, that they didn't meet the test of being a responsible and responsive bidder.
Yeah, it actually lists out 6 different items that they failed to respond or provide information on or that type of thing.
That is correct. It's in the blue sheet.
And I want to just read this part of it just so that it's on public record, because we have now started a thing called fact or fiction with some of the things that are going around town. It says, the community has shown great resilience and engagement by creating artistic road name signs. While these do not meet the legal requirements of road signage, this project is not to remove any existing of the artistic signs. It is the desire of the town to retain the artistic signs currently erected and to promote continued engagement, creativity, and demonstrations of community resilience in recovering from Hurricane Ian. I thought that was an important thing to put in there that some people maybe missed out on. The question I have for you, Mr. Town Manager, is, are these signs in the town's right of way, or are they in Lee County's right of way on Estero Boulevard, where they'll be placed?
I don't know that there's a uniform answer to that. I would say they're probably in both locations, either our right of way on the side streets or county on Estero Boulevard. They do meet our exemption for permitting, but each sign, there wasn't a standardization of where they were placed, so each sign could be in either right of way.
What just leads me to my next question is, being that Estero Boulevard is a Lee County road and the side streets are ours, does the responsibility then, John, fall on the town, or a mixed, just for the cost sake of it?
I think that depending upon how the sign, what it has on it, if it's Estero Boulevard on one side and the side street, whichever it might be, then that might be a joint sign. That where the cost should be shared, I would think, with the county, but I don't know the specifics of how we designated where the signs are going to go. But I think that from what I've seen, all we're asking the contractors to put in place are signs for streets that are owned by Fort Myers Beach.
And I believe that, there was a conversation that we had before where the town was putting up little informational signs about bicycles on those signs, and they could do that on the street signs because they were on the town property, town right of way, where the county right of way we weren't allowed to do that. So I think by the implication there is that these street signs are actually on the town's right of way where they're placed. The official ones, not the homemade ones.
And these signs, Keith, would be covered under some sort of category FEMA funding?
Street sign,
Yes.
the official street signs, yes.
So we will get reimbursed at some
Correct.
point for these? Okay.
Yes.
And I think the handmade signs are strictly, they don't have anything about Estero that I know of. The ones that I've all seen are all the side streets. So if they have to be moved back out of the right of way, we could do that, and so then it wouldn't interfere with Lee County Road, correct?
Very easy fix, yes.
Okay. Because I love them. I think they're great.
They are pretty fun.
One,
Any other-
one,
yes.
one last thing in that regard, and because some of the signs are very, very nice, just say beautiful. So, but you know, we have adopted a version of what's called the Florida Department of Transportation Green Book, which is a manual that virtually all the local governments, you know, are required to follow, that specifies how signs are supposed to look in order to be able to meet the requirements of the Green Book, and that's what will be implemented through this agreement if you move forward with it today or whenever you decide to move forward with it. And it you know, best way to describe it is the generic street sign that we all know and have grown accustomed to seeing prior to the storm.
The official street sign. You like the unofficial.
As long as you don't. As long as you're not trying to find. Now, I think, Keith, you had a brief conversation about is an option to maybe beautify these signs a bit so they're not just the generic.
There was, and I didn't get that in time for the bid specifications, but we were going to ask and can still ask for an after-the-fact addition to the legal street signs to personalize them to the town somewhat, town logo or some other design that would be, you know, approved by the town that could be added to these signs. I thought we could get a separate line item for what the additional cost of that would be. That was, unfortunately, that was after the solicitation had already been specified and gone out, but we could certainly do an add-on.
Is there any interest before we move on from that to have to give the staff direction towards making something more artistic out of our signs?
Councilor Veach, would you elaborate on what you're thinking about? I'm just trying to understand what you're thinking about.
Well, you know, the signs we have are those green reflective signs. You go to a lot of places and you'll see signs that will have a bump in them with a logo or another piece of the sign that has something about the sign. You see them a lot in developed communities.
Something about the town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With our signs. So it seems like, you know, if it's not ridiculously expensive, that we could do something to make them a little more interesting than just the generic sign.
Okay, thank you.
I would love to see that, or at least see a price on it as to what it might entail.
Yeah, I believe the town manager understands our direction, and I think through this allows him the ability to negotiate those things.
Thank you.
Is there a motion for ITB 23-06-PW, administrative item C?
So moved.
I'll second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next up is administrative item D. It is RFQ 20-06-AD, ongoing professional services for environmental assessments and marine engineering. Adopt Resolution 23-27, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving and authorizing the town manager to execute one-year renewals of the professional services agreements between the town and the environmental engineering firms selected under RFQ 20-06-AD, environmental assessments and marine engineering, and providing an effective date. John?
It's time for renewal.
And would these have to have, I assume do these have to have the 2 CFR?
Yes, I think that we We already have it on those.
On those, okay. Yeah, I
That's the
see it.
first batch that we did several months ago, and this is now to renew them for, I think, the first of 2 potential 1-year extensions.
For 2. And this is for the environmental and the marine.
Yes. And there's, again, for the public, there's not necessarily a cost associated with this, because under these continuing services agreements, we only use the services when needed, and that then comes before you at the specific time when a specific project is tasked to one of these firms, if it's not within the manager's discretionary spending limit.
Thank you for making that clarification. Any questions for staff? Hearing none, is there a motion for administrative agenda item D, RFQ-20-AD, ongoing professional services for environmental assessments and marine engineering?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. That brings us to our final public comment. Is there anyone that chooses to speak at the final public comment? Hearing none, we'll close the final public comment. Town managers items.
Been busy. First off, I'd like to introduce you to our new finance director, Joe Onzik. Joe, if you stand up at least.
If you wouldn't mind, just if you'd come up, if that's all right with you, Mr. Town Manager, just to introduce himself so the public can see his face and hear him.
Absolutely. And Joe started last Monday, so he has a week under his belt now.
What's your background as well, if you would, Joe?
Oh my, well, thank you very much. It's a privilege and an honor to be here. I'm very happy to have been selected and to serve the town. I come from Kane County, Illinois, where I had been the executive director of finance for the past 10 years. I just completed my 10th year before coming here. Prior to that, I had been at Aurora University as their controller for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was the controller for Friendship Village of Schaumburg, which was a continuous care retirement community. I was there for a couple of years. And prior to that, I was a controller for a software and development and software consulting company that did both software development and consulting training. So I was a controller there, and then I started out there as a consultant also before I became the controller, and provided consulting services for their software. And prior to that, my first job out of college, I was with Alden Press. I started out as computer programmer for the finance department and then transitioned into a financial analyst position there. So I have a variety of experience from public sector all the way through nonprofit to government, and it's been a wonderful experience. I think I've acquired a wealth of knowledge along the way, and hopefully will bring that to bear as I face the challenges here.
Joe, is it also true that you're also a certified public accountant?
I am. Yes, I am.
Very good.
Joe was fully immersed in the culture of Fort Myers Beach this weekend at the Sunset Festival.
Yes, I did enjoy that very much.
I did see you there. I couldn't tell if you were scared or happy.
Probably a little bit of both, but mostly happy.
Very good. Any other questions for Joe?
Joe, we're going to have to work on your footwear. I had a lot of comments about your New Balance tennis shoes. You're going to have to get more beachy, I think, at some point. Those are dad shoes.
I haven't had a chance to get to the store yet, but I will work on that.
That's the spirit. That's the island spirit.
Okay, thank
Welcome.
you.
And welcome aboard.
Yep, welcome.
Thanks, Joe.
Also, along the lines of some of the staff that we've been filling back in again, I don't know if you're aware or not, but between the storm and probably New Year's, we had about a 30% reduction in our staff, people leaving for whatever reason. And so we've been filling that back in again, but all of these are positions that were included in the budget. So Joe is our first big hire. We actually have we have a utility manager, new utility manager, Stephen Matuska, who starts today. He's not here. New permit tech, Ed Larson, starts today. We have an HR manager who now has accepted and we'll start April 24th. Did I say the contract specialist? Also someone to really work on our procurement and contracts. Also, we've extended an offer to Frank Kropacek, who I think had a relative who worked at the town in the past. We have some positions posted of 3 maintenance workers, town manager, utility customer service and building supervisor. So all of these positions, and then we have 3 new base supervisor ambassadors coming on too. So all of these positions should really help us lift our level of customer service to the town and our visitors alike. We also are soon going to be advertising insourcing some of our additional permitting services, probably 5 positions to be paid for through our existing fee structure, no increases there, to help us respond
Mr. Town Manager,
more positively.
you
Yes.
just glanced over that. I think that's important to a lot of people. Could you talk a little bit more about give a little more granularity to that? How many folks will be involved? Will we be hiring people to take on that role as opposed to outsourcing it? What do you envision for the future along those lines? Because I think it'll be very well received by the residents of Fort Myers Beach.
At this point, we rely on a third-party provider who's actually on the east coast of Florida for providing review and inspection type services for us. And while we want to retain expertise there, we want to roll in 5 positions to enhance our staff and our delivery here on the ground. So that's what we'll be working on. We're going to advertise that. It's going to take a little while, but we're going to advertise that probably this week, start advertising those positions. So in addition to this new permit tech that's just started and our contracts procurement specialist, we're going to roll in these other positions too.
If a permit tech just started, you say another one?
Yes. Ed Larkin started today, actually.
And his role would be as a permit technician?
That's correct, working in our community development department.
So aside from the bringing in the outsourcing, are you at this point can we safely say we're fully staffed in the permitting division, or are we still trying to fill spots, or how are we? I think just the public's. I know we've been beefing up, and I just didn't know.
We are beefing. I'm not sure if we've replaced all of our vacant positions that were pre-existing. Sorry, was that me? That were pre-existing. I'm not sure if we're exactly flush there or not, but we are filling those in, and we're adding these additional positions too that will be paid for either through the existing fees or through reduced external contracting costs.
Excellent, thank you. And just for the record, since this is a public hearing, is there particular skill sets you're looking for to fill these positions at the permitting process? What kind of folks are you looking for again, people do listen to these hearings?
It's great sport. I'd like to ask Steve to come up and talk about the expertise that he's looking for.
Keith, did you say that the procurement specialist accepted or is going to be hired, or you haven't heard back yet?
Yes, they have. We've extended the conditional offer, and we would expect that to be accepted this week.
All right, thank you.
We are looking for a building plans examiner and a building inspector position.
But who are you?
Oh, for the record, Steve Poposky, Community Development Director. We are planning, like Keith mentioned, to roll in some in-house plans examiner and inspector positions that would help to provide a higher level of service for the community. Building plans examiners and building inspectors are licensed positions with the Florida State DBPR. There is a requirement for at least 5 years of construction experience in the building trade. So typically that would be like a general contractor or a residential contractor for 5 years. Just has to have verifiable experience, and they would apply through the DBPR for that license.
Any other questions for Steve while we got him up here?
While he's here, I'd like to also talk about an initiative that he's enacted for our trade permits, to roll some of those reviews in-house also, which will help expedite approval of those.
Sure. So the department is always trying to find faster ways of doing things and still meet the same requirements. We've decided to expand our over-the-counter permitting so that we have things like roof permits. A lot of trade permits can be done in-house without sending them out for a review for the time being. So that should help speed some things up.
Steve, just for those who may be watching, how do you define a trade permit, just for lay people?
So let's say somebody is replacing a electrical panel, like a panel board that was damaged in the storm. That would be an electrical trade permit. If they're doing a repipe, that can be, they can indicate the cost value on the application, and they don't necessarily need to do a whole cost form just for that. They just need to indicate the cost of that project, and then we'll tie that in with the 50% rule later when they get their remodel permit. We'll add everything together from the storm.
Mr. Mayor, but since we have Steve here, and it's always a treat to have you here, Steve, and I know you're on the front lines. Is there anything that you're seeing trend-wise that you'd like to use this forum to kind of give people some advice or guidance? Any ways that people are going astray or confused? Anything you want to clarify today based upon you get all the questions? You're on the front lines. Anything you want to share publicly in terms of just giving folks some advice or help?
Sure. So the letter that many people received what's called a substantial damage determination letter. That's a letter that's required actually by your insurance carrier if you want to apply for increased cost of compliance insurance coverage. That's if you had flood insurance during the storm, through your insurance provider you can apply for increased cost of compliance. It's up to $30,000 in funding through your insurance carrier to elevate or demolish your home if it was substantially damaged. So this letter was needed as a first step. If you want to file that claim, you need that letter. That's the first thing. Also, we've just been noticing there's quite a bit of activity around where we're trying to get the word out that you do need a permit to remodel your structure. So be sure to get that in. A remodel permit will have the cost form all built into it for the FEMA requirements. So you'll just delineate the different costs, everything that you're doing to repair your structure the way it was before the storm. That's a requirement that we need to do as part of the National Flood Insurance Program. So you'll notice the application, especially after a storm, is a little longer, but we tried to streamline that. We made a form that actually calculates, you enter in your address and it propagates through the entire application. As you enter it on the first page, it'll enter it through every page. As you fill out the form, it'll add and multiply all your figures out. So it should total everything for you in the bottom right-hand corner of the form. So anyway, get a permit before you get started on your construction project. It's very important. You need to do that before. You need to make sure that you're not putting money into your house, and then we'd find out later that you have to undo some of that and maybe elevate your house. That's maybe the worst case scenarios that we want to try to avoid, above and beyond just the code compliance aspect of it.
And one kind of question has come up now. If someone, if they're building above the BFE, then they're not required to do the 50% calculation. Is that correct?
So if your house, I'll try not to get too technical, but if the lowest floor elevation of your house, which is, if you have an elevated house, it's going to be it's the first living area of the house. It's not going to be your garage. If that lowest floor elevation is already at the base flood elevation plus 1 foot of freeboard, your house is already compliant for floodplain. So you can do whatever you want with it. You can fix it up. And you still need a permit, but you don't have to elevate it. And you're not really subject to that 50% rule because you're already in compliance.
Right. So there's no requirement to you just to prove that you're at the proper elevation.
If you're already up, way up in the air, elevated above that elevation, you're already in compliance. So you don't have to. And you fill out the form, but again, we're going to find out when you submit your elevation certificate that your house is already elevated. So you don't have to elevate it further, so long as you're elevated to that elevation that's on the flood insurance rate map right now.
And is that clear in the paperwork that if you're above, if you give your elevation certificate and you're above, your living space is above that BFE, that you do not need to fill in the 50% rule?
I mean, I believe it is. If you have any questions, obviously you can stop in person, call, email. Happy to help. But yes, you would just submit, if you're already at the elevation, submit your elevation certificate, and then the plans examiners will be able to determine that you're already elevated, so you don't need to run into that.
Thank you. No.
Right. The flood insurance rate map is.
Why don't you repeat his question, Keith,
Oh.
for folks who are listening? Yeah.
Sure. The question was on the flood insurance rate map, the flood maps on the website. The question was, is there a different elevation that's required for each location? And typically there is. It's because you look at the map and it's there's contours on there, there's different zones, and the rules are different for each zone. So there's like an A flood zone, there's a V flood zone, and then there's a flood zone in between those called a coastal high hazard area or a coastal A zone. And there's rules for each one. And unfortunately, it's pretty complicated, but we're happy to help with specific questions. I don't want to get too far into it, but yes, depending on where you are, it's going to change what your elevation is. You're going to have a base flood elevation, then you're going to have an additional 1 foot of freeboard, like a safety factor. So you always add that 1 foot from the Florida Building Code into that.
And Steve, since you're up here, this was going to be one of my council member items, but since you're here, and since the town manager's here, we've discussed it several times. You know, permitting has obviously been a hot button on the island for a long time. I've been trying to implement changes to it for years since I've been sitting up at this table. Would you think it would be beneficial, as I've been talking to a lot of residents, and not a lot, but the residents who don't necessarily understand, or the builders for that matter, that do not understand that the additional, as you said, the permitting application has gotten lengthier because of the requirements that we have to do to follow the National Flood Insurance Program. What I'm seeing when I sit down and discuss with people is it's very simple things why it's getting rejected. Very simple things that maybe they didn't understand. And specifically one, I'll give you an example, the cost form. You got subcontractor and then you've got the GC side, or if it's the homeowner. And one person was rejected because they simply filled out that form incorrectly. Do you think it would be beneficial to have a forum, a charrette, if you will, with yourself, the town manager, maybe one of the council members being present, to maybe walk through the process? And because it seems to me like a lot of the rejections that are coming back are going back to the builders who maybe have been here for a long time, and the process has changed. And I can tell you as a former builder, when you get into a routine of doing something and then you submit something that you think should be approved and then it gets sent back, they're so busy now that they're just sending it to the homeowner, and the homeowner is now saying, wait a minute, why are we getting rejected? This is a reputable builder. But they maybe just don't understand that this cost form has to be filled out a certain way, or there's certain things. Do you think it would be beneficial to have a little forum? We could do a web thing, so builders that couldn't be there, or homeowners that couldn't be there, just help them understand a little bit exactly what the process would be, so that when they submit it the first time, I'm seeing that permits are coming back pretty quick. They're coming back in less than 2 weeks when you've got the proper paperwork that has been put in the first time. And any of the rejections that I've seen, at least in the last month or month and a half, have been for not having documentation on windows or something that shows that they're code compliant stuff for the state of Florida. That was a long-winded question to ask if you think that a forum of some sort would be beneficial for the residents and the builders to get the best information we can in one location. They can ask the questions, and hopefully that will help alleviate a lot of the stress on both sides.
Yes, I've had that conversation, and I think that's a good idea. I think we're going to be planning that soon. I think, so when I say it's a longer application, I don't know if it's longer. The problem we had when I first came is that we had people submitting and they would forget a form entirely. Like if they wanted to be an owner builder, they would just not include the owner builder forms, and they were mistaking the owner acknowledgement form, which is a form that explains some of their requirements, and it's kind of like, read this, understand it before you get your permit, and the owner builder form. There's two separate forms. So what we did, that's one example, but they were forgetting scope of work. They were forgetting a site plan, but we had no idea what they were doing. So we just combined them into one form. So the form packet is a little bigger, but there's not really new forms. It's just putting it together, so hopefully they don't forget it. So that's the difference. So instead of maybe a 6-page form with 3 other form packets that you're supposed to include, but they were being forgotten. We include them to say it's 12 pages plus we had some feedback as well. It said, can you try to explain some of these things on the form? So we added some additional information to try to, some very common things that are mistaken or forgotten. We put those on the form. So it did make the form a little longer, but it's really just, it's information. It's not something you have to fill out. So it shouldn't take longer. It's just all compact in one packet. So you click on one thing and you get the entire packet. Hopefully you include everything.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to, I commend you for your idea, and I think not only should, I guess you could call it a workshop per se, but I think it ought to be recorded and then that video placed on the town's website, because people sometimes learn visually like that, and I think to have someone like Steve up there explaining it visually, walking him through the form, you did that once before in one of our videos. I thought it was extremely helpful, so I think that's a great idea, Mr. Mayor, and again, to record that and put it on our website for people to click and hopefully refer to, I think that's a great idea.
I also know, correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea of taking some of these trade permits in-house, wasn't that one of the conclusions from the get-together with the various contractors? That one of the slow parts was those trade permits?
I don't think that was brought up specifically, but I think it's a reasonable risk that we could take. For example, we are trusting the contractor to install the code compliant installation, and then we're going to inspect it later. There is a risk, I suppose, not taking a plan for electrical repair, and that they could put in something that wasn't code compliant, and then the inspector shows up, it's not code compliant, it's not going to pass inspection, they're going to have to redo it and do something different. That's always a risk that we have, but there's a balancing act. I mean, you can't just send everything to review, it would just take too long. You can't review every permit, there's just too many. So hopefully I think it will help. The biggest thing, I think that workshop will help as well, because we just have to it's always a challenge. Like you want to make you want to have an application that's relatively short, it doesn't seem like it's too burdensome, but at the same time you need a lot of information, and the more information you can get, the less likely it is that your installation is going to be non-code compliant in the end.
Yeah, and going back to that cost form, that to me is a GC in Florida, there's different rules than maybe other states, and someone that came from another state that is now a Florida GC, the one example that I gave earlier was they simply put everything under the subcontractor line item, but yet they were doing all the work. Well, that automatically triggers for the National Flood Insurance Program that you have to have your electrician, if it's in the subcontractor column, your electrician has to submit their proposal along with the GC. So essentially, the GC is not doing the work, the electrician is, or the plumber. So instead of having everything on this side or this side, depending on what the GC was actually going to do versus what the trades people were going to do, is what caused this thing to get rejected back. And it was a very simple solution that the general contractor didn't know that they were supposed to do. So I think that's some of the information that could really help alleviate some stress from the homeowner's point of view, the GC, and from town staff. So.
Yeah, I think the bottom of the cost form has some information. A lot of times that's overlooked. They're filling out the cost form, and by the time they get there, for whatever reason, they don't see it. But it does have it at the bottom of the form, so just be sure to read the form completely. It'll tell you what you need to have on it.
Steve, on the structurally damaged letter that just went out from the town, if somebody received that, and they've actually got people living in their home at that point because they got a structural engineer come out and said they were fine, got their electrician to say they're fine, but they still get this letter, do they need to worry about that, or do they just only need to worry if they decide, or not worry, but utilize that if they decide to go up, they could get that $30,000? In other words, they don't need to worry if they get this letter if they've done all the appropriate steps. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. Yeah, I'll try to summarize quickly. 3 basic steps, or 3 options you have. You get a letter that qualifies you to apply for increased cost of compliance coverage up to $30,000 to help elevate or demolish your home. So that's a prerequisite before you even call your insurance companies to get that letter. Now, 3 options are you can demolish your home. A lot of people don't want to do that. So the other option is to elevate your home. You can raise the elevation up, and you're going to have to bring everything up to code. There's certain rules with that. You would get a permit for that. And then the third option is you get a permit, but you feel that maybe that initial determination was maybe you can fix it for less than 50%. If all of your bids show that you are less than 50%, then that will be revised. And so you can essentially disregard the initial determination letter.
So, if show that you're under the 50%, and let's just say there's just minor damage that's been fixed, do you need to that designation?
No, we do that automatically. We have a spreadsheet, and we have all the people listed. So as you come in, you get your permit. We will regularly go back and update that information. So you don't have to actually get any determination again from the town. You've been revised at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so hold on. You're going to ask after the meeting. You can go ahead and ask him. Yeah. Just real quick before you go, Steve, just to touch on that a little further. If someone has received their permit from the town to either elevate, demolish, rebuild, they've already met that requirement. Therefore, the letter, you can disregard the letter. And I believe it actually says that in the letter, correct?
Right. So that means like a residential permit, a commercial permit, or a remodel permit. So we did the full cost form analysis. We added everything together, and we determined that you were under 50%. So you're good. So there may have been a crossing there. So maybe you applied 2 days ago, and then we sent the letter at the same time. That happens sometimes, but exactly, you've been revised. If you already been approved for a rebuilding permit, not a trade permit or one of the initial ones, just to fix the electric, then you're good.
Yeah, thanks for coming up, Steve. I know you're awful busy, and I'm sure this gentleman has a question for you. And I can't urge anyone enough, or any more than I already have, that if you have any questions that you don't understand, feel free to email me, email one of my counselors. We will make sure that Steve can. Usually I just forward it right on to Steve, and Steve answers it, or you can email Steve directly if you have questions, or feel free to stop in. Steve and his staff have been very good about sitting down with people, and usually the questions get answered and people leave understanding exactly what they need to do via email or in person, and it really makes the process that much smoother.
And just additional time, Steve, we would be remiss if you one more plug for your frequently asked questions page on your website. That, and also what it is and what number we're up to now.
I think we're at 99 questions answered. So we're going to add at least one more because we like even numbers. But it's a very good resource. You click on the blue sand hour on the fmbgov.com. That gives you to the building services page. There's a frequently asked questions link on the right side. You go there and it has everything we could think of to answer. And just in case it's not there, we also have a resource library, which is a new site right off the building services page. It's got all the documents. If you really want to read into FEMA regulations, into building code, it's a great resource. Yeah, check that out.
If anybody's rebuilding or has a contractor doing their rebuilding or a subcontractor, I just really encourage people to go to that web page or website that Steve mentioned and at least skim through those frequently asked questions. Losing my mic here. You could save a lot of grief down the road for a lot of folks, and I just it really is worth your time to do that.
Thanks, Steve. Get back to work.
Thank you, Steve. Didn't mean to put you on the hot box. My last item, and it was a nice segue, Mayor, into our website and emails. We have a red button at the very top of our homepage that's a complaint tracker. We call it report of concern, but it's basically a complaint tracker. And my goal is that these issues get resolved as low in the organization as possible, and it leaves the rest of you guys up to developing policy and not having to make sure potholes are filled. I know it's satisfying when someone comes to us with a problem and we get it fixed, but ideally a citizen shouldn't have to come to the mayor. If your house is on fire, you don't call the mayor, you call the fire department. And anyway, there's a complaint tracker there, and you can enter your complaint or your question into that tracker, and it automatically routes it or gives you the opportunity to route it to the correct source in the city. So if you can't get somebody on the phone or you can't get an email returned, I know it's not a personal connection, but that's another avenue that I'd like to see utilized more, and I think it works pretty well because it automatically goes to the correct source.
Very good. I like that. I might try it.
Work.
Anything else? That's all, thank you. Town attorney items?
One item. I'm going to be asking for authorization to schedule an executive session shade meeting with the town council and our outside counsel in the James Jameson versus Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida litigation matter currently pending in the Lee County Circuit Court, case number 17 CA 000198. We previously got authorization for 2 other shade meetings. So the idea is with this third one, and one of them may drop out because the litigation is actually in the process of being finalized, but we could still have it if the council wants, and that's the litigation that you already authorized regarding the Sunset Grill matter. But in any event, the idea is to schedule all 3 of the shade meetings after the next meeting. Last time we did this, we did it in the afternoon, starting at 1. I assume that that's what you would like to do with this one that's coming up, and we'll coordinate outside counsel if that's the direction of the council, and you authorize this particular request for shade meeting. The next meeting is actually scheduled to be the town manager. Let's shoot for April 17th in the afternoon. And we'll work with the clerk to arrange for that and schedule that and make sure that you all have the invite.
That date works for me. Any conflicts with anyone else? That's
Works for me.
That's the 17th at 1, correct?
17th at 1 p.m.
Unless we do have an M&P on the 6th, either way.
Is it better to do it earlier than later?
Let's if you all can let the clerk know if you're available that afternoon, we'll check with outside counsel, see what might work best for them as well, because we do have to coordinate their calendars. It's the same group of attorneys. They all work in one law firm, but we do they do have to check their calendars as well. So if whichever works for them works for you all, we'll either do it the 6th or the 17th of April.
And the 6th works on mine as well, so.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I usually keep the day cleared because you never know how long these meetings are going to go for.
Yeah, I'm fine with either day.
Okay. So I just need a motion and direction to go ahead and schedule that.
I'll make a motion to go ahead and schedule either on the 6th or the 17th the shade meeting with the town attorney and outside counsel.
In the Jameson matter. We
In the
already have
Jameson
offers.
matter.
I'll second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Nothing further.
All right. For, who are you, sir?
My name is Rudy Garcia.
Hold on.
You've been through the public testimony and public portion of the agenda, and there was an item that we're here to ask about the emergency preparation for temporary relocation contract.
That was pulled.
That was
Go ahead,
pulled
John.
by town staff because we received a notice of intent to protest that bid. So under your code, the filing of the notice of intent basically freezes the entire process, so there was no need to place it to move forward. If for whatever reason the protesting entity decides not to pursue the actual bid protest, because there's now another window that's opened in which they have to file their formal bid protest, then it can be placed on the future agenda. But under your code at this point in time, everything is placed on hold.
There you go. All right. Thank you. council member items and report. Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Well, I just wanted to briefly update my colleagues on the beach school issue. I know the mayor and the town manager have been heavily involved in this through meetings as well with the superintendent, but the ad hoc committee had hoped to bring a interlocal agreement to be approved today. I'm told that the attorneys for the Lee County School District need additional time to draft the interlocal agreement, which pushes back the process a bit. So we won't have that today. We have a meeting with the senior staff of the ad hoc, of the superintendent's team and the ad hoc committee at 5 o'clock today, and we should know more in terms of the progress. I think our counsel has something he wants to say.
Yes, I apologize. I had made a mental note to mention this during my report. I am scheduled to already have a conference call with the Lee County School Board's legal counsel for tomorrow to begin that process and hopefully have something for both boards to consider at their next respective meetings.
I'll know more after 5 o'clock today, but I believe that the school board is going to still at least discuss it, maybe at their brief on the 28th, but I think we're a little off schedule. So the hope would be then for us to have an interlocal agreement to approve, and again, in a perfect world, which we don't live in, at our next town meeting on the 3rd. That would be a goal to strive for, John. I know a lot of this is in Lee County's hands, but we certainly welcome any sense of urgency on this matter.
And just on that matter, I would really appreciate the council being able to look at this, not just assuming you're going to come up with an agreement and it's going to be approved, because we've been out of the loop on this. And so I think if you have something, whatever you're out shopping right now, what the ad hoc committee is doing, I would like to see that brought in front of the council for discussion before we just sit down and approve it.
Well, that's certainly a fair request. I've tried to be very transparent about what's happened in these conversations, and there isn't anything on paper at this point, Councilor Veach. That's our challenge, or certainly we'd be happy to disseminate it. John can certainly attest to that since he's not received anything from Lee County yet. They were going to work on an initial draft, and I guess, John, and I'd ask you procedurally to sort of respect Councilor Veach's request. When we have sort of a working draft, you could share it with the council before we meet then, so they'd have some time to look at it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, just,
yes.
But in fairness, Councilor Veach, such a working draft doesn't even exist at this point. But when it does, your point's well taken. We'll try to disseminate it as soon as we can, as soon as we actually have something that's tangible.
Thank you. I won't demand anything that doesn't exist.
Let's appreciate that.
Before you go on, if I could just touch
Yeah.
on that, because I think it's pertinent based on what was just talked about and the negotiations through the interlocal agreement. Bay Oaks was part of that, is my understanding, watching the meetings. Based on what our town attorney has just said, that we're probably going to have another lengthy delay to getting Bay Oaks open. So in full transparency, please relay that message to them. I've played phone tags with Dr. Renier several times to try to get that information to him, but just so that everyone is clear, Bay Oaks was scheduled to be open by now. It will not be open probably for the next few months. It sounds like we're going to have to rebid this again, which I want to make sure they understand that going into this interlocal agreement that we're striving to work with them, but right now things are kind of outside of our ability to change.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. I know you've been working to resolve those issues. Again, we have a little bit of time still on the Bay Oaks front. Again, the ultimate goal is August 10th, is to be able to have that after-school program begin. So we've got some time to hopefully reserve those challenges, and hopefully you'll have success with the various vendors involved.
Anything else? We can talk about it afterwards. You can talk to the town attorney afterwards, but it's not on the agenda to talk about right now. But I'll be more than happy to meet with you after the meeting if you'd like. Okay, no problem. Anything else, Vice Mayor Adderholt?
I think that's everything. Thank you.
But actually, before you move on there, Adderholt, because I was going to mention something. You mentioned about insurance, and I know you have this excellent history with regulation and insurance industries. I've certainly been getting a lot of complaints. People are being offered hundreds of dollars sometimes for a house is not livable. That if we can, maybe if the council is willing to empower whatever we can do to Vice Mayor Adderholt to come up with a forum, maybe a place where people can complain about insurance issues, so we can come up with the data we need. I don't know, Jim, this is your kind of area, so what can we do to help you, if you're willing to deal with these insurance companies?
I have been talking with the staff of the CFO's office trying to get an insurance village here on Fort Myers Beach. They've been working with looking for a date and a location. An insurance village is a little different than what I would hope, but it might work. They've had them around the Southwest Florida post-Hurricane Ian, where they literally get the insurance carriers to show up along with the CFO's office and the Office of Insurance Regulation, and they just create a forum where people can meet with their carrier directly. I think, unfortunately, we're getting past that now from a process standpoint, and we're literally, many folks are being stonewalled by their insurance company, and so we really need to file a complaint with the CFO's office and or the Florida Office of Insurance Regulation, and so we're at a point now, quite honestly, where many people of our island have been forced to hire a public adjuster, or engage a public adjuster, or engage legal counsel. And it's extremely unfortunate, and I think that's where the CFO's office and the state insurance commissioner can come in and take some of the worst actors in terms of carriers and do this market conduct exam, and then literally force corrective action, because there was a recent Washington Post article that discussed some systemic issues with auditors or with what's that? Yeah, well, with carriers, but also with the appraisers as well, and there's a few companies involved that are particularly egregious, and it seems like again, insurance is regulated primarily at the state level. It seems like they should be, just my personal opinion, they should be much more aggressive in coming down on the bad actors. I know there's some good actors out there, but there's some real bad actors that are, and it's becoming almost systemic across the board as you talk to people on the island in a wide variety of capacities. So I'm still pushing this concept of an insurance village, but I think right now it's matured to the point where people are specific disputes with their carrier, and either they're being denied coverage, or they're just not getting a response, or they won't return phone calls. I mean, and again, it's not every carrier, but there are enough carriers doing this where it's creating a tremendous challenge. And nobody is asking these folks to pay claims that are not legitimate. We're just asking them to pay the legitimate claims. And some of the horror stories that I have heard from people around the island, and it's past the point of anecdotal. It's again systemic. So, but yes, we'll continue to try to work on this. But quite honestly, I think it's up to the regulator at this point to take some dramatic action and come down, particularly on some of the bad actors.
Could we maybe at least provide a link somewhere to the CFO complaint?
Yes, there's two. It's odd. In Florida, it's a little unique because the CFO oversees the Office of Insurance Regulation. Normally, each state has its own insurance department, and in about a fifth of the states, that person is elected. But in Florida, the CFO oversees that particular division of insurance. And so there's two links, really. You can complain through the CFO's office or the Office of Insurance Regulation. But I'll talk to Jenny about seeing if she could post that on our website, because I do think that would be a good link for people. Because the more complaints that the regulatory entities see, they can track these complaints, and if it gets to a certain volume, again, they can begin to take regulatory action either through a market conduct exam or they can take other steps to intervene on behalf of consumers.
Anything else, Vice Mayor? No, thank you. Councilor Veach?
A couple things. I attended a recovery and resiliency workshop last week, and there was a couple points that came up, and one I've had some talks with the town manager about, is that we're considered, by the USDA, we're considered a rural community, and we're eligible for community facilities and water and water disposal grants. And I just want to make sure that that's part of what we're working on with probably Tidal Basin or whoever, if there's potential money there. There was talk about more money coming for the hazard mitigation grants. And I know, Keith, you had a thing there that they're talking about more money for raising houses beyond just the increased cost of compliance money. And I think you had a draft of something to let people know, and you were working on that. But it could be potentially a game changer for a lot of people. If there's grants where they could lift their house, that is more than just the $30,000. That could turn a lot of people's plans from trying to battle with the 50% rule to raising over the BFE.
Correct, and we'll be issuing, if we haven't already issued, kind of some public information on that in cooperation with FEMA and with DEM on those programs and how to access them and take advantage of them.
Okay, there was quite a bit of conversations about that, and the conference was really just a pitch where people came in, pitched to a panel of people about their projects, and I know that we're doing that internally. I don't want to step on any toes, but it seemed like there was some opportunity there that maybe wasn't being addressed. That's it.
Thank you. Councilor Woodson?
Yeah, so at the event on Saturday, I was talking to a number of people, and especially Alex King. I don't know how many of you know, but Alex's family has been very, very charitable to the 501c3 organizations of the beach. It's the King Foundation that donates this money. And so a lot of people were talking about, we don't want to be forgotten this summer. Right now it's really busy on the beach. It's spring break. We've had people that maybe necessarily aren't staying on the beach, but they're coming over and they're spending money and they're going to our restaurants and heading to the beach. And a lot of discussion of how do we keep us alive and well and active during the summer. And so one of the things, and you're going to hear a lot more about it, but I just wanted to bring it to the forefront so that people can get involved if they need be. But this is mainly about events and fundraisers and contests of who has the best, and maybe it's an event a week or 2 events a month, but there's basically $50,000 available from funding from the King Foundation that would go as prizes to the most either artistic or creative event or that type of thing. Yeah, they'll probably need permits for all of these. We don't even know what these events are, but it's kind of a challenge that's being thrown out. Stimulate your imagination, create your own idea event. This is for all of our 501c3s on the island. And it could be a really fun summer. They're basically going to go from mid-June, I think it is, mid-June through mid-November to get these out there, and we'll publish them, and we'll hopefully have them on the website and really hype all of these events just to help continue bringing people in onto the beach, supporting our businesses, and getting some rewards and recognition out of it. So I thought it was kind of a fun idea. And I know for a fact that there's a permit already in, but we were talking about the beach school, and the principal wants to do and is planning to do a 5th grade graduation at the beach school for our 5th graders that, we don't want to miss out on everything. So they're planning a 5th grade graduation, and I don't have the date of that yet, and there's also a permit in for a school concert at Times Square, and I know that permit went in, but it would be like a sunset concert of all the kids in the band up at Times Square. So look for those announcements too. That's it.
Thank you. Councilor King?
Other than enjoying hearing the name King associated with good things, I'll pass.
And his name really is John Alexander King.
My brother from another mother.
Oh, boy. So you have nothing, Councilor King? You're good? All right. The only thing I had was just to follow up with Councilor Veach and Councilor Woodson about the resource or the recovery task force. Did you get that information as to the dates for the upcoming meetings? They should have been forwarded on to you. If not,
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
follow it.
Yeah, I've got a kind of piecemeal. It's kind of, it came in all
so
kinds of different orders.
I believe there's one this week.
Yeah, and I've got that on my list. I've also reached out and tried to engage in a conversation with them to get more information before I get to the first meeting.
Yeah, I think if you reach out to Commissioner Wayne's secretary, she'd be able to, or assistant would be really helpful.
Yeah, we're just playing phone tag right now.
Understood. I just wanted to follow through, make sure you got it.
Yeah.
I'm just back up on
You're
that,
just-
right? Because we
yeah.
can't be both in the meeting.
No, you're just, if he can't make it, then
Then I'm-
you would be
okay.
you would be the alternate.
Okay.
And I should be able to make it except for the last meeting in July.
Amy, if you could just send them, Amy, the schedule. I believe it's one. I think it's one Friday a month.
It's like the fourth Friday of the month, I think.
Yep.
Be gone.
Other than that, that's all I have. We also have one item on here that we have to do. Item A, Town Council Policies and Procedures, and that's to adopt Resolution 23-30, entitled "A Resolution of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, adopting an amended Town Council Policies and Procedure Manual and providing for an effective date." Mr. Town Manager?
Mr. Mayor,
Town Attorney?
and members of the council, this resolution reflects the direction given to staff during the last MMP meeting to modify your policies and procedures to allow for staff to vet the town manager and conceivably as well the town attorney proposals and bring them back to you as needed. Narrow them down. I think that it reads to bring back no less than 5 and 2 alternates.
Yeah, that's what it reads.
And just want to make sure that that reflects the council's direction, and then approve the resolution as drafted or as modified.
Is there any questions for the town attorney or town staff on this? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All
I'll
second. Oh, got a second by Councilor Woodson. Any discussion?
Someday I may be able to be fast enough to beat John King to
I know, it's
his
so
motion to
moved.
adjourn.
You're never going to do that in getting out of a meeting.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We are adjourned at 10:38. We will be back at 1 o'clock for our joint meeting with the LPA.